Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You should be able to see the screen in front of you, insha'Allah ta'ala. So let us begin today's lesson with the name of Allah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let us take a scenario. Say, carry on, inshallah, for something was wrong. So let's begin by taking a scenario, and we'll use this scenario to think about the principle that I want to teach you today, or how a particular particle, Lākin, it's called, operates. So this is taken from Imam Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, in his Jami' al-Kabir, that say there's a person here, this person here, this man here, he confesses, so he's a confessor. He confesses alayya alfu qardin, that I owe somebody £1,000 as a loan. Just as an example, right? So he confesses to somebody that he owes them, he owes £1,000 as a loan repayment, if you like. And then the person who he hears this, or the person that he's talking to, so this person here, if you like, he says, La walakinnahu ghasabun. He says, no, but, so la, this is the word I want to focus on today. You can translate it to but it was stolen. You stole it. So what's happening is somebody's confessing that they owe £1,000. The person who hears this negates it and says, no, but it was stolen. Okay, so the question is, does he own £1,000 or was it stolen? In any case, he needs to give £1,000, but the question is, was it stolen money or was it money that was given as a loan? That's the question here, right? Was it usurped or stolen, or was it a loan? How are we going to solve this? So to be able to solve this, we look at language theory. Now, before we try to solve this puzzle, what we need to do is remember two principles. But before I go into that, I want to focus on la. Okay, lakinnahu. Lakin means but or although. I think the better translation here might be but for lakin. All right. So we're trying to work out, how does lakin operate? To do that and to solve this mas'ala, and you can apply it to any scenario, you have to know two conditions. And once we do the two conditions, once we explore the two conditions, we are then in a position to solve our mas'ala. So what are the two masail? The first one is that anything that's before and after, whatever is before the lakin, right? It only acts as a connector when the two parts are connected, that are connected or besides each other. So think about this. Lakin is here. Whatever is before it and after, there's nothing in between, and they are connected. They are connected by the lakin. That's the number thing, right? They have to be besides each other. So that's the first condition. The second condition is that the negation concerns one thing, while the positive aspect concerns a different thing. So here there's a negation. I've labeled it as negative. Negative. Just put in a box there, right? So the second condition is that it concerns one thing, which is a loan. This is concerning the loan, and so he's negating the loan because the person confessor said, upon me is £1,000 of a loan repayment, and the person responds, no, it's not a loan repayment. So he's negating something, and then what he's affirming is something different, that it wasn't a loan, it was something that you stole. So you can see a negative and a positive. Yeah, I hope you can see that in the diagram here. Maybe I could just keep it as it is for now, right? So the first condition is that what is before the Lākin and after they're connected. Okay. The second thing is that the positive and the negative. So what's being negated and what's being affirmed, what's been negated, or the other way around, they are two different matters. What does that mean? Well, here, if you think about it, the person who's responding, the one who's receiving a confession, he's saying, no, you don't owe me £1,000, but it was stolen. So there's a difference. There's a loan he's negating, and he's affirming or establishing a that the money was actually stolen. Okay. If either of these two conditions are missing, then what we will say, so if this condition here, number one, and this condition, they have to be there. If it's not there, then we will say they are both independent of each other and unconnected. Okay, so that's really, really important. Right. So let's go. Let's kind of look at the mas'ala and we'll go into more detail, inshallah ta'ala. So go back to the mas'ala now, based on our theory. Somebody said, a confessor said, this person here, if you like, he said, I owe so and so person £1,000 as a loan, as an example, repayment, right? So he's saying it's a loan, 1,000. That's what he's saying. But the person who he said it to, he's saying, no, la, walakinahu ghasabun. No, it was stolen. Okay, he's negating it, and he is saying it's something else. So the two conditions: one is that what is before the Lākin and after the Lākin, they are both connected together by the Lākin. So that condition is met. Number one is met. First condition is met here. Second condition is that what is being affirmed and what is being negated must be two different matters. That's been met because he's negating the loan. He's saying it's not a loan, it's this that you owe me. He's establishing that. Okay. So this works, and the way I do is I like to draw positives and negatives. Just makes it easy. So I can see it. So the two conditions are met, and this is coherent because both parts of his statement, the person responding, before and after the particle Lākin, are besides each other. Number one. And the positive and negative parts concern two different matters. One's regarding a loan, one's regarding him saying, the person who is responding, saying, no, you stole this, right? So this means that both the confessor and the one confessed for are agreeing that £1,000 is owed. They both agree this. They both agree £1,000 is owed, but what are they disagreeing on? The cause, right? Is it £1,000 because I lent it to you, according to the person who's lending, the confessor? Sorry, not lending, the confessor. Or is the one who's been confessed to saying that it's stolen? So what we do is we go forward looking here, and he said it's stolen. So the condition is coherent. Okay. So both the confessor, this person here, and the one that is confessed to are agreeing that £1,000 is owed, but they disagree with the cause. Why is it owed? The confessor says it's a loan because that's what he said. I owe you. Upon me is £1,000 loan, right? And the one who's being owed says, no, it wasn't a loan. It was stolen. So you still owe me £1,000 because you stole it. That's what a confessed to person would say, and the confessor would say, no, it's a loan. Okay. So the negation of the one owed is not a denial of being owed 1,000. It is denial for reason given for it. He's saying, no, you don't. It wasn't a loan. It was something that you stole. Yeah. If there's no dispute in what is owed, the confession will stand and the money will be owed. So that's how it works. It's £1,000 will still be owed, the net result will be, but the cause will be different from each party. Okay, so that's very, very important. Now, just a few things. I hope that case makes sense. You just need to remember all of this. It's very, very easy. Now, this is obviously the fifth particle that we've been covering in this series. And what Lākin, if you look at it very carefully, what's it doing? It's clarifying the Lākin. If you look at the Lākin here, it's clarifying what came before it, right? It's clarifying a preceding misconception here. There's a misconception in this case that it was a loan. The Lākin comes here and it clarifies it here. It says, no, it wasn't or lent, it was stolen here. Can you see? Yeah. So, and it appears after a negation, okay? And it separates them. Appearing after a negation, like it does here, makes the particle Lākin different to the previously one that we've covered, which is bal. Because in bal, if you remember, that can appear after negative and positive sentences. But in this one, only Lākin comes after negative sentences. Okay? And it's clearly visible. He said na, it's clear. He said la, it's clearly visible. Yeah. Whereas the particle bal, which we covered in the previous lesson, is in itself a particle of negation for what comes before it and a particle establishing what comes after it. Okay. So the la is connecting what comes before it with what comes after it when it fulfills two conditions, when they are both besides the Lākin, which clearly happens in this example, and they are affirming and negating two different things. Therefore, they are connected. It's consistent, if you like. So I hope that example is clear. You might need to watch it again. I hope you don't need to. But of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Let's build on our theory and see how we can make more work with this. So that's the basic idea. That's a surah. That's the surah of what we're covering today. Right. Say there's a different type of confession. For this one here now. I'm moving on to the second example. So, if somebody was to confess, عَلَيَّ أَلْفٌ مِّن ثَمَنِ هَذِهِ الْجَارِيَةِ. If somebody said, I owe so-and-so, so I owe so-and-so 1,000, have I done this right example, right? عَلَيَّ أَلْفٌ. Okay. Okay, that's fine. عَلَيَّ أَلْفٌ. I don't know if I copied the example. Oh, it's right there. I owe 1,000. So say somebody says I owe 1,000. So they confess as payment of this slave girl. عَلَيَّ أَلْفٌ مِّن ثَمَنِ, as payment for this slave girl. Whatever it be. Could be a phone, could be a car, TV, could be anything. I don't know. Whatever people are into. Right? But we'll stick with this example. Could be Jariya, slave girl, could be a phone, laptop, whatever. Right? So somebody confesses. So if you think about this, here this person confesses, right? And he's confessing to this person here, and that person says, "La." So he's made a negation. La al-jariyatu jariyatuka, walakin alayka alfun. So he says, no, the slave girl is yours. Al-jariyatu jariyatuka, but walakin li alayka alfun. You do owe me 1,000 pounds, right? Or you owe me 1,000. So what's happening here is very, very simple. This is an acknowledgement of the confession of owing 1,000, and the money will be necessary on the confessor. So he'll need to give 1,000 pounds. Yeah, because he says he's acknowledged it. Right? Because what's he disputing? He's disputing the cause. He's disputing the cause in this particular. Look at this. Al-jariyatu jariyatuka. The slave is yours. وَلَكِنْ لِي عَلَيْكَ أَلْفٌ. But you owe me £1,000. So is it for the slave, or is it you owe me £1,000? Okay. So both parties agree that it's £1,000, right? The only thing they're disputing is the actual cause, if you like. Because the one who's owed is disputing the cause and not the actual amount owed, right? Both parties agree to the amount. Yeah, he's not saying anything about that. وَلَكِنْ عَلَيْكَ أَلْفٌ. It's undisputed and it's due, right? So la al-jariyatu jariyatuka, no, the slave is yours. Because of that, so he's saying one is it because of the slave, or is it because of the money, right? Is it money? Of course, they both agree on the money is because of the slave. That's straightforward. I don't think there's anything there to look at in detail. Yeah, straightforward. Any questions, of course, reach out to me. So let's build on what we've been covering. So let's start with another example here. Let me see if I can use this pen. Okay. Bismillah. So okay, so let's look at this scenario. Someone's in possession of a slave, right here. So this is a master or an owner, and he owns something, a slave or anything else. Could be a phone, I don't know, whatever it is. It could be anything. And he says, so he announces, هذا لفلان. This belongs to so and so. This is for so and so. Okay. And that so and so, so he says to this person, this so and so, this belongs to so and so. This belongs to so and so. Right? And the person who said it, so say this belongs to Harun. And Harun says, ما كان لي قط. It's never been mine. So he's negating it. ولكنه لفلان آخر. He says, it's never been mine. He's never been mine, or it's never been mine. But ولكن, so you can see the lakin here, it belongs to somebody else. So he's negating and then he's affirming. Can you see? So the two conditions, are they met? It seems so, because they are both connected. The negation, affirmation, they are both connected by the lakin, and they seem to be, at least on the surface level, about two different things. Yeah, two different things. So let's look at this example. Now, why is this example important? What we're going to look at now is we're going to look at a scenario where somebody says it as a full sentence. They say, مَا كَانَ لِي قَطُّ وَلَكِنَّهُ لِفُلَانٍ آخَرٍ. That's the example we're looking at. But what if somebody says, مَا كَانَ لِي قَطُّ, they stop for a few seconds, or they go for a walk and they come back. There's like a pause. And then they say, وَلَكِنَّهُ لِفُلَانٍ آخَرٍ. That's what we're looking into today in this example. What if there's a slight delay? That's what we're looking at. So that's why I've said it here. So what we're really doing now is the two principles that we identified before, we're adding, if you like, even though we call it a principle, we're adding this principle in. This is the third principle. I've labeled it number 3 for you. Okay. Now, if this statement, second statement, وَلَكِنَّهُ لِفُلَانٍ آخَرٍ, was stated together, so you'd follow it this way. Was it stated together, without separation between what comes before the particle lakin and what follows it, the statement is valid. Right? We say the statement is entirely valid, and it means the negation of his personal ownership here. ما كان لي قط. He's negated that. That's a negative, right? And he's established the ownership for somebody else. So two different things: negating to himself and establishing ownership for somebody else. That's fine, right? And there's no contradiction in this. because you're saying it doesn't belong to me, it's not for me, it's never been mine, and it belongs to somebody else, belongs to Ismail, for example. So there's no contradiction there, right? And so the owner of the slave will be the other individual. So he'll be Fulan Akhir, that's yours. Goes back to this. You go back to this person here, or the person who said it. But we know that, and we've already done that in the previous slide. But what we want to learn in this example is, what if there is a delay, if you like? That's what we are looking at here, right? So if it was a separation and he said, Ma kana li qattu, he's never been mine, it's never been mine, and there was a moment, there was a delay after he said that. So he said it, it's never been mine, Ma kana li qattu, and then he said, Walakinnahu li fulan akhar, right? Maybe he was silent, maybe he went for a walk or something, right? There's been a separation now. What will happen is, if there's a delay, we consider it as separate sentences. So this sentence and this will be separate sentence. A and B, if you like, separate sentences. We will consider them to be separate sentences. What does that mean? Well, sentence A, the first one, I've labeled it here. He is now, what's he saying? Ma qala li qatti. He's denying ownership. He's disputing the words of this person who claimed the slave to be his. Yeah. And furthermore, he is providing an alternative suggestion of the one who had possession of the slave. Right? Remember, in the first scenario, when there wasn't a gap, the slave goes back to him. But he's disputing that now. It's a separate sentence. So he's denying ownership, which is here, this one here, this box here, and he's providing an alternative suggestion, which is disputing whether the slave is actually his, because he said, "Ma qali qattu," it's not mine, never been mine. Goes for a walk, comes back. "Walakinnahu li fulan." It belongs to somebody else. Belongs to somebody else. They're not connected anymore. So this is a rejection of the claim of this person, the guy with the phone, or the master, right? So because now they are unconnected, they will both be seen as independent. A and B are both independent. They are both independent. Hakada. Very, very important. Okay. Its purpose now is to establish evidence against the one who had possession of the slave by opposing his claim and providing evidence that the slave is not mine but belongs to somebody else. So the person who made the claim, the master in this case, it means that he's lying that it belongs to him. So who does the slave belong to? Whose phone is it, for example? Basically, whoever ownership is found on. And it won't just be a claim now. It'll be with the person who the phone is found with, or the slave is found with. Okay. So he's done two separate. It's never been mine. He's obviously denying knowledge of ownership, and because he's had a break, he said something. He's saying this for somebody else, right? Alternative claim. Okay, very, very simple. So all we've learned so far is three things. Lākin is consistent when what comes before it and after it are connected, and the subject matter, one has to be negative, one has to be affirming, one has to be negating something, and they have to be connected. There's not, and the third thing is there's not going to be a time delay, right? That's how it works. If there's a time delay, then they will be seen as separate sentences. Okay, that's very, very easy. Now, so I just put a warning here. 2 points before need to be met. which we mentioned. You can even say 3 points if you want. Right? So an important point to note is that in the construct of the particle Lākin, is that it should not negate and establish the same thing. Doesn't make sense. You can't negate and establish the same thing. For example, let me give an example here. I've kind of sketched it out at the bottom, but I'll go through it with you, inshallah. So, for example, if a slave girl, so here's a slave girl here. She's a slave girl. She gets married. Okay, fine. But she hasn't got permission from her master. That's fine as well, because we can retrospectively go to the master and ask him if he can cancel it out if he wants to. But for now, she's got married, and she's not got permission of her master, but she's agreed to a bridal gift of £100, to say £100. Okay. The master finds out, and what does he say? لا أجيز العقد بما بمئة. Right? I don't. Listen to this very, very carefully. لا أجيز العقد. I don't allow this contract. I don't permit the marriage for 100. So he says that. Then he says Lākin. Okay. Lākin. But أجيزه بمئة وخمسين. I allow it for 150. Now look at this very, very carefully. He's negating 100. Negating 100. And he's affirming 150. What's going on here? Is it the same amount? Is it the same thing? Right? So, what's happening here? He's negating the marriage. لا أجيز العقد بمئة ولكنه أجيزه. He's establishing it. So he's negating and he's establishing. The first point is met. What about the first point about them being before and after the Lākin? Is this coherent? Negating of marriage and establishing a marriage is obviously not coherent. Right? You can't negate a marriage and establish a marriage at the same time. Therefore, it's incoherent. And because it's incoherent, we will see them as independent sentences. Can you see? It doesn't work. Yeah. Coherent would only work if by negating a different thing to the thing that is established. Right? That's the only way it would work. Here, negation is for a marriage, and immediately after the particle, here, what's he doing? He's establishing the same marriage too. You can't have two opposites to become part of one sentence. Right? This means the condition has not been fulfilled and it's not fulfilled. Right? It's incoherent. It's incoherent. So what we do is we say they are both separate sentences now. Simple. So the words of the master now indicate that he has refused the marriage with the first part, this part here. لا أجيز العقد بمئة. And with the second part, where he said £150, I do, is a new proposal. Isn't that amazing? So he's basically, it's a separate sentence. So he's negated the original contract where she got herself married off for £100, right? That's negated, and it's a separate sentence. Think of it as the scenario before. There's a break, if you like. And then what he's done, he said, okay, I'll allow it for £150. So this is effectively a new proposal from the master. Yeah. He's making a new proposal on behalf of the slave girl, because there must be a proposed acceptance. So that's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay. Similarly, the master said, for example, he used alternative words. Say, for example, he said, I don't accept it, but I accept it if you increase 50 upon that 100, the marriage contract is of the slave girl is void. Because the first part is cancelling the previous marriage as before, The second part, following the particle, is a new proposal. This ought to be the group, this man here, if he wants to accept or reject this. Nice and easy, nice and simple, alhamdulillah. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to me and I will be more than happy to help you, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. Okay, I hope that's useful. I'll just summarize what we've been covering so it's clear. We started with an example. We looked at Lākin, and Lākin, what it does is for it to work, for it to be a coherent sentence, the what comes before it and after it have to be besides Lākin, the topic. The negation and the affirmation have to be about two different matters. But in the next slide, we look at, well, it has to be done together, right? There can't be a delay, otherwise it's incoherent. So that's the examples that we looked at. And in the second slide, we looked at an example where there was a delay. So this is kind of like a third condition, which is that if there is a delay, then we will see it as incoherent and two independent sentences. The last example, we said, well, the 2 points need to be met. Of course, there can't be a delay, but again, you can't affirm and negate the same thing at the same time. You can't affirm a marriage and negate a marriage at the same time. So what you do is you separate them. In this case, he's cancelled the original contract, the master, and he's made a new proposal. It's as simple as that. Alhamdulillah, if anyone has any questions, they can ask. Inshallah, that's been useful. And I will see you all next week, inshallah. Subhanallah bihamdihi. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك